I don't know why I'm doing this today. It's a Tuesday, raining outside, the kind of rain that doesn't make any noise, it just appears on the window. And I've been sitting in this chair since about 7 this morning, drinking the same cup of tea that went cold an hour ago. My name is Margaret Holloway. I'm 84 years old, and I live alone in a house that used to feel much smaller than it does now. I'm not recording this because I want anyone to find it particularly. I'm recording it because there are things sitting inside me that have been sitting there for a long time, and I think they need somewhere to go before I'm not here anymore to let them out. So, here we are. I was married for 51 years to a man named Robert Holloway. He kept his surname, and I took it when we married, and for a long time that felt like the most natural thing in the world, like I had stepped into a life that had been waiting for me. We met in 1971. I was working at a printing press in Birmingham, running invoices between departments, and Robert was one of the technicians. He had ink on his hands most mornings. He smelled like machine oil and sometimes like the soap he used to try to cover the machine oil. I used to tease him about it. He never really minded. We weren't dramatic people. Neither of us. We didn't have a grand romance with sweeping gestures and declarations. We had Tuesday evenings watching the news. We had arguments about whether the heating was too high. We had a garden that Robert cared about far more than I ever did, and for 30 years I watched him out there on Saturday mornings, kneeling in the mud with that same expression on his face, this quiet, absorbed sort of look, like whatever was happening out there was the only thing that mattered. That was Robert. I don't think I ever told him how much I liked watching him do that. He died on a Thursday morning in November, 4 years ago now. The night before, I said goodnight to him, the way I had said goodnight to him for 5 decades. He was in bed. I was still up. I came in, turned off the lamp on his side, said goodnight, love, and he said something back. I don't remember exactly what. Something short, something ordinary. I went to the sitting room. I read for a while. I fell asleep in the chair, which I did often, which he used to complain about. And when I woke up in the morning and went through to check on him, he was gone, not gone somewhere. Gone. He had died quietly, in the night, in his own bed, and I had been asleep in the next room in a chair with a book in my lap. The days after that are difficult to talk about, not because they were dramatic. They weren't, really. They were very quiet. People came. People left. There were forms to fill out and phone calls to make, and I made them all. And somewhere inside that I was also doing something else, something I didn't have a word for yet. I kept going over that last evening, not obsessively, not in a way that worried me at the time, just returning to it, the way you return to a room to check you've left nothing behind. What did we talk about at dinner? I couldn't remember. Something about the television program that was on. Something about whether we needed more washing powder. Nothing. We talked about nothing. And then, good night. And then that was it. Here is the thing I've spent 4 years trying to understand. The good night itself didn't bother me. Not at first. What started to settle on me slowly over weeks and then months was something harder to name. It wasn't grief in the way people describe grief. It was more like a question that kept forming in me and never quite finishing itself. Had I been present in those last years, in those last months, in that last evening? Had I actually been there with him? Or had I been somewhere else, inside my own head, inside my own habits, inside the life we had built so thoroughly together that I had stopped actually seeing it? I couldn't answer that honestly. That was the beginning of something uncomfortable. Robert had a way of going quiet sometimes. Not angry quiet, not sulking. Just a stillness would come over him and he would withdraw slightly, go somewhere inside himself. And I had learned over the years not to push it. Give him time. He'll come back. And he always did. But I'm sitting here now thinking about the last few years of his life. He was 79, then 80, then 81. His health wasn't poor, but it wasn't what it had been. He moved more carefully. He got tired earlier in the evenings. And those quiet spells, they came more often. I told myself it was age. I told myself it was just Robert being Robert. I don't know that I ever sat down next to him during one of those silences and said, "What is it? What's going on in there?" I don't think I did. I assumed I knew. I assumed after 50 years I could read him well enough that asking wasn't necessary. That assumption, that is the thing I carry. There was an afternoon. It must have been about a year before he died, when Robert was sitting at the kitchen table, and I came in to put the kettle on, and he looked up at me, and there was something in his face. I noticed it. I registered it the way you register a sound in another room. Briefly, and then you move on. I put the kettle on. I asked if he wanted a biscuit. He said, "No, thank you." I made the tea, and I went back through to the other room. I have thought about that afternoon more times than I can count. I don't know what was in his face. I genuinely don't know. It might have been nothing. It might have been something he had been turning over for weeks and never found his way to saying. I didn't ask. The kettle boiled. I made the tea. People tell you after someone dies that you'll remember them clearly, that the memories come back. Some do. But there's another kind of remembering that nobody warns you about. The remembering of what you didn't do, what you didn't say. The spaces in a relationship that you just accepted as normal because they had always been there and you had always meant to do something about them. And then one morning, there is no more time to do anything about anything. Robert and I never had a conversation about dying, not a real one. We were both in our late 70s and early 80s. We were not young. We knew that in the abstract way you know things you're not quite ready to look at directly. We had made the practical arrangements, the will, the funeral preferences, a folder in the filing cabinet that I had put together and hoped I would never need to open. That part we had done. But I mean a real conversation. What are you afraid of? What do you want the last years to look like? Is there anything still unfinished inside you? We never had that conversation, not because we were afraid of it exactly. I think because we had both quietly agreed, without ever saying so, that we didn't need to, that we knew each other well enough, that some things could remain understood. That agreement, that unspoken pact between two people who loved each other and were also, in some way, protecting each other from something I understand it. I do. I don't think we were wrong to make it. But I wish we had broken it, at least once, at least toward the end. I found a notebook after he died. It was in the drawer of his bedside table, underneath some other things, tucked right at the back. A small blue notebook, the kind you'd buy at a newsagent without thinking about it. His handwriting inside. I recognized it immediately. That slightly cramped, slightly leftward script he'd had his whole life. He'd written in it occasionally over the years, not regularly, not every day, just sometimes. I sat on the bed and I read it. Most of it was ordinary. Notes about the garden, reminders to himself, the price of something he'd bought, the name of a book someone had recommended. And then there were other entries, shorter ones, written at different points, no dates on most of them. One of them said, "I wonder sometimes if Margaret knows how much I have valued this life we built. I should probably say so." That was all. I don't know when he wrote that. I don't know what made him write it that day and not another day. I don't know if he ever looked at it again after writing it. I sat on that bed for a long time. He never said it. Not in those words. Now, here is what I want to be careful about, because I've spent 4 years being careful about this. He showed me. He showed me in the garden, and in the way he made sure my car was always serviced, and in the way he sat beside me when my mother died and didn't say anything, but didn't leave either. He showed me in 50 years of small acts that I can now see, clearly, were a kind of continuous declaration. I knew I was loved. I knew it deeply, and I never really doubted it. But reading those words, I should probably say so, something happened to me that I didn't expect. I thought, did he think I didn't know? Did he carry that uncertainty for years? That I might not have fully understood what this life meant to him? And then the harder thought, did I ever make it easy for him to say it? Did I ever sit with him in a way that made that kind of thing possible? Or were we both, in our own ways, waiting for a moment that never quite arrived because neither of us made it arrive? I was not a closed person. I don't think I was cold. But I was busy. I was practical. There were always things to organize and problems to manage, and that was something I was good at. And I think somewhere along the way that became my primary mode. Get the thing done. Sort the thing out. Keep moving. Robert was quieter than me, more internal. He processed things slowly over time in that way of his. And I wonder, I genuinely wonder if my particular way of moving through the world, that briskness of mine, if it ever made him feel that there wasn't space for the slower things, for the things that took longer to say. I don't know the answer. He's not here to tell me. That's the part that doesn't resolve. After I read the notebook, I put it back in the drawer. I'm not sure why. I still have the drawer. The notebook is still in it. I read it sometimes, late in the evening when the house is very quiet. I've never shown it to anyone. Our daughter, Patricia, she's asked me a few times how I'm getting on. She's a good woman. She calls every Sunday without fail. She came and stayed for 3 weeks after Robert died, and I was glad of her, and also, I realize now, I didn't really let her in either. I kept saying I was fine. I kept being organized about everything, making sure she had enough to eat, making sure the guest room was comfortable, She was grieving too. He was her father. I think I was so focused on managing that I didn't leave much room for the two of us to just sit in it together. She didn't push. She is very like her father that way. I wish I had pushed a little more, on both of them, on myself. There is a particular quality to the silence in this house at night. Robert was not a loud man by any means, but he had a presence, the sound of him turning pages, the particular way he cleared his throat, the weight of him in a room, in a bed, in a life. The absence of those things is what the silence is made of now. I've come to know it quite well. 4 years is a long time to become familiar with the silence. Some nights it's all right. Some nights I sit here quite peacefully, and I think about him warmly, and it feels like enough. Other nights I find myself back in that kitchen, the kettle, his face, the thing I didn't ask about. Or I'm back at the bedroom door saying goodnight, and in this version I stop. I go back in. I sit on the edge of the bed and I say, "Are you all right, love? Really all right?" In this version he says something, I don't know what, but he says something, and I hear it. That version is not what happened. I'm not telling you this because I think I did something terrible. I loved Robert carefully and consistently for over 5 decades. I was there. I was present in all the ways that I knew how to be present. I don't think I failed him. I want to be clear about that because I spent a long time in those first years worrying that I had, and I don't think that's honest or fair. But there is a difference between loving someone and being fully awake to them. And what I understand now, sitting in this chair at 84, is that those are not automatically the same thing. You can be loyal and attentive and devoted and still have a kind of glass between you and the other person. Not because you put it there deliberately, not out of coldness or neglect, but because life is busy and habits form and assumptions build up quietly over years, and before you know it, you are living alongside someone rather than fully inside the life with them. I am not saying that as a lesson. I have nothing to teach anyone. I'm saying it because it is what I know now, because it is what costs me something to sit with. I've been thinking recently about time. Not in a frightened way. I'm 84. I have made my peace with the shape of things. But I've been thinking about how time feels different when you look back over it versus when you're inside it. When I was 45, when I was 55, I would have said our life together was full, good, rich in the ways that mattered. And it was. I believe that. But looking back from here, I can also see all the evenings that passed without much in them. All the conversations that stayed on the surface. All the times one of us was slightly elsewhere and the other one let it go without reaching across. Those evenings were not wasted, but they also weren't as full as they could have been. I don't know what I would have done differently. I can't construct a different version of myself at 55 and place her back into that life. That's not how any of it works. But I notice them now, those evenings. They take up a lot of space in me. Patricia came at Christmas. She brought her husband, David, and the grandchildren, and for 3 days the house was full in the way it used to be. Full, noisy, and warm, and slightly chaotic in that good way. On the last evening after the children were in bed, she and I sat in here. Just the two of us. It was late. She had a glass of wine. I had my tea. And there was a moment, a long pause in the conversation. And she looked at me and she said, "I miss him, Mum." Simple as that. I miss him. And I said, "I know, love. I do too." And we sat there for a while without saying anything more. It was one of the better moments I've had in these 4 years. That sitting together, that not needing to manage or organize or fill the space with anything. Just two people who had both loved the same man, acknowledging it quietly in a warm room at the end of the year. It didn't fix anything. Nothing fixes anything, I've come to understand. But it was real. It was actually present. I was actually there in it. I thought about how much I wished I'd had more moments like that with Robert. And also, sitting there with Patricia, I thought, here is one. This is one right now. So I stayed in it, as long as I could. I didn't get up to tidy anything. I suppose what I'm saying, if I'm saying anything at all, is that the last night was ordinary. It was meant to be ordinary. There was no way to know. I don't blame myself for not knowing. But I think about the nights before it, the months before it, the years before it, and I think about how much of that time I moved through at a slight distance from my own life, doing the things that needed doing, being who I had learned to be, without fully stopping to take the measure of what I had. Robert in the garden on a Saturday morning, the particular way he laughed at something on the radio, the ink on his hands when we first met, the way he sat with me when my mother died, all of it there, all of it available to me, and some of it I held, and some of it I let pass without holding it, not because I didn't love him, but because I supposed I thought there was more time. There is always, until there isn't, the feeling that there is more time. I'm not frightened of dying. I want to say that clearly. I'm tired some days in ways I didn't used to be tired. The house asks more of me than it did. There are things I've stopped doing because they're too much now, and I've made peace with that gradually. I have a good doctor. Patricia calls every Sunday. I am all right. But I have been wanting to say these things, for a while now, not to warn anyone, not because I think anyone will do anything differently, because an old woman said something into a camera on a rainy Tuesday, just because they've been sitting inside me and they needed somewhere to go. Robert was a good man, quiet and steady and real. He deserved to be fully seen, and I think I saw most of him, and I think there were also parts I could have looked at more carefully if I hadn't assumed I already knew what was there. I hope he knew how much I valued it. Our life, our 51 years. I should have probably said so. The notebook is still in the drawer. I'll go and make a fresh cup of tea in a while when I'm done sitting here. The rain is still on the window. The house is quiet the way it always is now. Good night to him, every night, the same as always. It's not nothing I've decided, even now, especially now. It might be the truest thing I do.